Welcome viewers. Media plays a major role in the development of cultural orientations, worldviews and beliefs. But in the current scenario, increasingly the parents and the educators are worried about media violence and its effect on children. Television, video games, music videos, internet, even to some extent news channel, all contribute to media violence. We have with us today Dr. Khan, who is an expert on media, and he is going to talk on media violence and its effect on children. Dr. Khan served as Assistant Director General for Communications and Informations at UNESCO in Paris for nearly a decade. The Commonwealth Educational Media Centre for Asia, CEMCA, which he conceptualized and established, is a vibrant organization serving open and distance learning communities in Asia and beyond. Dr. Khan has vast international experience in designing, planning and managing communication and information technology applications in education, science, culture, agriculture and rural development. So we are quite happy to have you amongst us.
Thank you very much.
Dr. Khan, to begin with, I would like you to reflect on exactly what is media violence.
Well, portrayal of violent behavior on the media is basically what is referred to as violence on media. Murders, crimes, shootings, portrayal of the heroes who are able to indiscriminately kill other people, etc., etc. That is what is referred to as violence on media.
Okay, with this view on media violence, exactly what is now the generation, like the parents are worried about media violence and its ill effects on children. So what is the media behavior? Like how are children more affected now?
Well, media is a very, very significant part of one's life. When you look at how many hours a day a child is exposed to either television or video games or internet or music videos or just plain other information channels, etc., etc. So the amount of time, in fact, there are studies that clearly indicate that children are spending more time with media than they are spending in school. So if you send your children to school, you expect them to learn. If your children are watching so many hours of television and playing video games and browsing the internet, how can it possibly not have an effect? Now, media can have both positive effect and negative effect. Children are smarter today because they learn a lot of things through the media. So media can be a very positive force in one's life. However, portrayal of violent behavior on media can have strong negative impact on the minds of impressionable age children. For example, children below 4 years do not distinguish between reality and fantasy.
Sure.
They have no way of distinguishing what is real and what is a fantasy. So it is likely to have impact on the minds, on the behavior of the children, and there are any number of longitudinal studies, cross-sectional studies and experimental studies that clearly demonstrate a relationship, a significant correlation between the exposure to violent media content and the violence, demonstration of violence in the behavior of children.
So you talked about this correlation where the children are who are getting exposed to so much of TV, maybe more than 4 or 5 hours a day they are watching TV. So does it really contribute to their aggressive behavior? Like, can we say that it's directly proportional to the violence which they are watching on media and in their aggressive behavior?
It is very difficult to to conclusively prove that the extent of exposure to the violent media and the demonstration of violent behavior among children. But there are any number of studies done all over the world, including in India, that clearly establish a correlation between the number of hours or the extent of exposure to the media and the violent behavior, the use of violent language, use of violent behavior in while playing with the peer group, talking to the peer group, or indeed there are any number of case studies now that have documented cases where children have simply imitated the violent behavior on media. I remember when I was in Bangladesh, what was that, $6 Million Man or something like that was being played, and a child jumped from his roof, imitating $6 Million Man, that he can jump, so can I. I mean, there are any number of examples of this kind. I mean, in our films, you have seen how a child or a person watches certain things on the portrayal of certain scenes and then enacts the same in real life. So, I mean, it is certainly has an impact on children's behavior, and a negative one.
True, because I can very much relate to it, since I have seen children doing role plays of all the serials which they see, which has Superman and all the characters of cartoon which they try to imitate and have role plays in their game time. So do you think that there is a difference between what they watch on the television? Usually we have talked about till now the serials or the movies, the characters from there. And then we also have video games, where the children now, we see generally that they are hooked on to internet, to computer games, to video games. All sorts of gaming pattern has evolved over time. So what is the difference between the violence which is portrayed in the TV and the video games?
Well, in terms of psychological impact, I don't think that there is a different, the media does not in itself. Yes, the video games tend to be more interactive, and anything which is more interactive is likely to have greater impact. Television, by definition, I mean, of course, there is now evolution of interactive television as well. But if you're talking about the comparison between video games and television, video games are more interactive, and therefore, and also the portrayal, because video games are watched individually, not, they are not broadcast over the air. And therefore, I haven't seen any study directly related to the comparative impact of video games and television, but one can only expect from general knowledge of the impact of media on human behavior that if it is more interactive, the children tend to internalize the violence portrayed in the video games more so. Also, because of the difference in the way that information reaches a child, the video game is played at home by largely, by the child herself or himself. Whereas, when something is transmitted through television, there is a general viewing, and parents may be around, or other siblings may be around, therefore the impact, there may be an intervention of some kind, and therefore not as much negative impact as in case of the games of all kinds. And unfortunately, the trend is that more and more gruesome violence is portrayed in video games, and parents don't unfortunately pay as much attention as they ought to pay on the possible negative impact of such video games.
Yes, very rightly said, sir. Also, when it comes to television, there are some programs which we say that it's quite informative. For example, news. Generally, it's watched with parents, with grandparents. The children are sitting there during dinner time, during lunch time, and it's a time for the family to sit around and watch television, watch television together. And what's your comment on news channels, which is portraying so much of violence nowadays? In order to build up their TRP, maybe they keep on showing the scenes of crime for a longer and longer period of time, with pointers, like they'll have arrows where they are showing persons who've been lathi charged maybe by the police atrocities, scenes of riots, scenes of crime. What's your comment on that?
Well, I think you more or less implied in your question that while it is news that is being broadcast, I mean, look at, for example, in recent years, the wars have been brought to the living rooms of people all over the world. The blood is splashed on television screen in the garb of news. Now, when you see violent behavior, when you see blood splashed on the screen, over a period of time, you become less and less sensitive to the human suffering. You see thousands of people leaving their homes, going and moving to a temporary camp where they live, the gruesome killings, mutilation of people, whether through the army or through militia or by neighbors, etc., etc. But the media, as you rightly said, captures the most violent part of political violence and political demonstration and political views, and of course in the name of news it is portrayed and it is brought to your living room where the family as a whole, including the children, watch those. Now, how can a child over a period of time not become desensitized to human suffering if this kind of these kind of visual images are brought to him, to his family, to his living room, to his daily exposure to the media?
Would you, like in India, as of my knowledge, there are as such no board like censor boards we have for films. Can we have something of that sort for these channels, like TV channels, whatever programs which are broadcasted? Should we have some kind of a control of the government or anybody?
Well, I'm a very strong advocate of freedom of expression. So I certainly would not advocate censorship on media. However, media, like any other social institution in a society, ought to behave responsively. You cannot, in the name of freedom of expression, you cannot violate all kinds of social norms and behaviors. Therefore, it is important for the media channels or media houses or media institutions to have some kind of a self-regulation. Professional bodies within these organizations ought to have a code of conduct which is self-regulation, and I think it is doable. It has been done elsewhere in the world. There is no reason why the same thing cannot be done. But to say that because there is sometimes, or there is some violence on media, that somebody in the government should sit there and clip the scenes, that has not worked. I mean, we saw the ill effects of media censorship during certain periods of governance in this country, and I am not sure if that is the best way to go about using the media in society.
So in that situation, what would be some of the ways in which this violence can be reduced for the children who are watching television?
Well, I suppose there should be a, as I said, a body that comes together and says these are the limits of portrayal of violence on media. I know that some media houses, obviously, if they make more money by simply portraying more gruesome violence, and they look for higher and higher rating by lowering the bar, the standard of media content, then they will do everything possible to keep that. But at the same time, they are part of, like any institution, they are part of society, and there is no reason why they should not adhere to an acceptable behavioral norm or pattern that a group of people can, a professional body, an association, an organization can be set up to prepare a set of guidelines. For me, as I said, media themselves can prepare such a set of guidelines so that there is the portrayal of violence is reduced to an extent.
Okay, sir. And in that situation, what role can the parents play? Any tips for the parents? Well,
parents have a major responsibility. I'm sure that nobody has greater stake in bringing up the children than the parents. And first of all, that the parents should watch what it is that the children are watching on television or video games or any other media. Unfortunately, as more and more people find work and employment, and so both the parents are busy working and sometimes use television or video games or internet browsing as a substitute for a caregiver or what you call babysitters. So in a way, television is used for babysitting. Now if that happens, then the child is will watch what she or he wants to watch. I think the parents have a responsibility to carefully observe what the children are watching and moderate their behavior, and sometimes, if they need be, tell them that such and such programs simply will not be allowed. They will not be allowed to watch. There are technical devices. You can, for example, put a chip on objectionable portrayal of whether it's pornography or gruesome murder or any other form of violence, that the third method of moderating the children's behavior vis-a-vis media would be to prepare a set of parental guidelines. How, in what situation, what programs that they can watch. For example, the parents go to a store where they buy video games. They hardly look at what kind of content, what kind of rating. The first question that comes to their mind is, how much does it cost?
True.
Now, if that is the primary consideration for buying a video game, then why do you blame the manufacturers of video games for creating the kind of content? Unfortunately, most of the video programs that we watch today, the content is imported, is a foreign content, and not only that it is so much alien to our culture. I'm not saying that there is no violence in our culture, there is a great deal, but the bodies being chopped and shown in a video game, should we allow that to happen? Should we allow our children to watch such programs, portrayal of such images on the screen? This is a question that the parents have to ask themselves. And as a parent, which having such a strong interest in upbringing the children, should you not look at the overall media behavior of your child and sit with them I mean, that's why the whole area of information literacy, sit with them, analyze what is good and what is bad for them. You know, I mean, if you tell them about the behavioral pattern in relation to their to their peer group, to the family members, etc., etc., should you not apply the same rules, same set of norms to their media behavior?
So this makes me also curious. I was just trying, while you were speaking, I was trying to simultaneously reflect that why all the programs which are shown on TV, especially for children, the cartoon shows, why they've become violent over time. Are the children more attracted to violent content, or?
Well, I was reading somewhere that violence and suspense attracts children. I suppose it attracts adults as well. You know, whether we like it or not, that is unfortunately, but to justify, to legitimize that violence on the media, to portray the person who is trigger happy and kills indiscriminately, mutilates people in order to prove that, you know, the bad guys have been punished. Now, it is very difficult for a child to distinguish. Well, there is a gratification saying, all right, you know, the bad guy was punished. But in the process, look at how much exposure there is to violent behavior. So it is true that to a certain degree, suspense and violence, portrayal of violent behavior tends to attract audiences. But at the same time, I mean, yes, given the freedom, people will indulge in all kinds of things. Should the society let that happen? Should there not be any moderation of people's behavior? The same thing. I mean, media is part of the society. It's a social institution. I suppose it has its share of responsibility, and that's why I said earlier that it must also adopt a set of norms which is self-regulatory.
What is the role of government, sir, here?
If you're talking in terms of role of the government to censor content, I'm not in favor of that, frankly. I mean, there is a censor board, and the censor board has a set of responsibility and operates within a certain guidelines, etc., etc. But I personally believe that the media ought to be able to regulate itself. That is the best way of handling it. And I mean, the government has a role in saying to the media, as part of the society, as responsible members of the society, you ought to behave in a certain way, and help them to develop a set of norms for their behavior, especially on portrayal of. I mean, when I watch Indian movies now, I don't see India in it. I mean, it's true. I mean, when there has been such a change in the portrayal of Indian culture in Indian movies, I have difficulty identifying India in Indian movies.
Very well said, sir. Sir, we've almost discussed the various impacts of media violence and issues relating to it. I would now request you to suggest few ways, or maybe any suggestion you would like to have for our students, social worker students who are working with children and who are working in this area where they deal with children right from the early age till adolescent. So any suggestions, any comments you would like to give them?
Well, I mean, social workers are a great institution and can make a huge difference in society. In order for them to help the parents and the children first of all, they must acquire media literacy themselves. You know, if they are not media literate, if they do not go and do a proper analysis and do their homework, you cannot be an advocate of something if you are not well informed. So my strong recommendation to them would be an exposure to media and information literacy. It is something like any other field of interest. You can also be media literate and information literate. So that is, I believe, an essential condition, and they need to be trained that media is a very important part of one's life today. That it is also a part of life, and it is a very important part of one's life and family life, etc., etc. There is a distinction between the two. So they have to realize that media can play both positive role and negative role. They ought to be able to find ways and means of suggesting or advocating the positive role of media in learning, for example. I mean, our entire institution, Indira Gandhi National Open University, based on that premise that media can be used to take education where people are. Okay, so now they have to learn. The social workers need to learn to intervene and find ways and means of suggesting to the parents, this is how you can moderate your children's media behavior. That would be my recommendation to the students of social work.
Thank you, Dr. Khan. It was quite an interesting session, and we talked about various aspects of media violence and its effect on children, both positive effect of media per se and the negative effect of media violence on children. I'm sure the program will be of immense importance to students of BSWE 001, that is Family Life Education, and also to counseling students, that is a Masters in Social Work, and they would find this interaction quite interesting and informative for them. Thank you very much. Thank you, Dr. Khan.
Thank you very much for having me here in this program.
Thank you, sir.